So you finally walked up to the pretty girl and said hi. Congratulations. Now what do you do? A woman's reaction to the mystery method by Mystery with Chris Odom. Chapter 6 deals with the conversation that men and women have when they first meet. Not the initial moments of, hi, what's your name? Although you probably don't want to walk up and just say, hi, what's your name? But everything that follows after that, where you're talking to her and giving her a feel for who you are as a person, preferably somebody of slightly higher value so that she'll be attracted to you and find you appealing. And Mystery starts off this chapter with a long list of what he calls indicators of interest. Subtle indications that a woman is attracted to you, interested in you, wants to spend more time with you. Things that she'll do, which have varying degrees of obviousness. Some of them are incredibly subtle. Some of them she's probably not even aware that she's doing. He warns briefly about fake indicators of interest, which I've done a lot of those. Like, I was an exotic dancer. I did fake indications of interest all the time. Like, we basically go to work and flirt with people all day. We're not really interested, but we're very good at pretending to be because we want your money. So that is a thing to be aware of. He then goes on to a long list of indicators of disinterest, signs that you should look for that whatever you're doing, it's really not working with her. These are all good things to know. Like, it's good to read through the list and just kind of get a feel in your mind for all these different things that women do. I think one of the reasons that my husband and I were so successful having this very long, drawn-out middle period between meeting each other and starting a romantic relationship is because I was constantly giving him very strong indications that I was very interested in him, and he was aware of those indications. I was always showing him that I wanted to spend time with him. I wanted to get to know him better. I wanted to learn more about him, and I wanted to be around him. He also has indicators of interest that he calls passive indicators of interest, where a girl is interested in you, but she's not actively acting like she's interested in you. She's not reaching out and touching you. She's not rubbing up against you. She's not playing with your hair. She's not doing any number of subtle things that would say, oh yes, I'm very interested in you. But she's also passively and in a very subtle way letting you know that she wants to be around you. And those are good to be aware of as well, particularly because that might be all she gives you. That might be the only sign you get. After discussing indicators of interest, Mystery moves on to what he calls negs. And I've seen a lot of people having issues with negs. I kind of tend to ride the fence on negs. On the one hand, I see what he's talking about, and on the other hand, I see guys who've attempted to do negs really, really badly. The important thing I think that a lot of guys I've seen have not seemed to grasp about negs is that they're supposed to be playful. You're not supposed to be just insulting a girl. And I mean, I know that strip clubs aren't necessarily a perfect example of a real environment because most guys in strip clubs assume that strippers are easy. Like, you walk up to them, you say, hey, I want a blowjob, and they just go bouncing up and down on the balls of their feet like, yeah, sure, I'll give you a blowjob, which never happens. But, well, let me rephrase that. It never happens in clubs where you want it to happen. At the same time, I've seen so many guys do bad negging. Like, I've walked up to talk to guys, and I don't know whether it's the fact that, like, a lot of guys have this opinion that exotic dancers are somehow beneath them because they're strippers. They're all about sex, so they're not actually people or anything. They're just sex objects with feet. And so I get a lot of that treatment, or used to get a lot of that treatment. But a lot of guys, they're so insulting and condescending, and it's like, if you think that you can just walk up to a girl and insult her and somehow turn her on that way, we're not masochists and we're not stupid. If you just feed us a ton of insults, we're going to walk away because you're unpleasant and you're being unpleasant. I mean, I cannot begin to tell you how many guys, they start off with like an insult. They'll insult my hair, they'll insult my teeth, they'll insult my, just anything. And I think they think that women are turned on by jerks, therefore this is how you attract women. And it doesn't work out that way. Like, a well done neg like negging that actually works on women, if you actually take the time to do it and you want it to succeed, you have to be playful. You have to be flirtatious with it. You have to be, you have to do it in a good spirit of fun and in such a way that that she can actually pick up on the fact that you're being playful. I actually love it when my husband throws me negs. And I was thinking about that when I first read about negs, which was back in, God, had I heard about negging before I encountered the rational male? I can't remember. I think I actually had heard about negging before I read the rational male, but rational male made me think about it a little bit more, so then I had to look it up, like what is negging. And I thought about it a little bit. And my husband, he has these little comments that he'll kind of slip into a conversation, and I love it. I've always loved it, and I always thought it was really fun. And I've been wondering about that a little bit, and so I asked him about it. I was noticing that he did a lot of things that alpha males are supposed to do, and so I asked him, why do you throw negs at me? Are you aware that you're doing this? Like, is this something you plan? And he looked at it and he was like, well, no, I never planned it out. It's not some sort of seduction style. I'm not doing it really for any other reason than the fact that I do it when I'm around my guy friends. Like, dudes insult each other. Like, that's what we do. And, that makes a lot of sense. And it also makes sense that it would be appealing to a woman if you give her a little teeny playful jab every once in a while. That's what you do if you're a guy when you're around guy friends. Like, not all guys, but a lot of guys, they tend to do this when they're around guy friends. They'll kind of poke at each other. They'll give little playful insults, And they do that with guys that they're relaxed around. They do that with guys that they're friends with. I remember there was this one night. I was at the bar. It was really, really early when I started dancing. And I watched these two guys who were obviously friends trading insults back and forth with each other. And I actually thought it was really cool. Like, I sat there just watching them insult each other back and forth for the longest time. And to me, it looked like, it looked like a human sexual display. That's why I thought it was so interesting. If men, pulled out weapons and had brawls or fist fights every time they had a disagreement, they would kill each other off far too quickly. A better way for men, especially men who are, capable of being very dangerous and damaging to one another. And this is something you see throughout the animal kingdom. Like, they have contests of will where they like glare each other down and one of them backs off because, he realizes the other one's bigger or stronger or mean or what have you. But with men, and because humans use their wits instead of necessarily their brawn all the time, they'll hurl insults back and forth at each other, and they basically weigh each other up, like who's wittier, who's sharper, who's faster, who's more agile on his feet. They're figurative feet, but they still matter. And so when you have guys sitting around trading insults with each other at a bar, they're practicing, especially if they're guy friends. If they know each other well, if they're pals, they hang out a lot together, they're jousting. And it's beautiful to watch. I actually really loved it, like just sitting around watching guys trade insults, because that's something that men do. I've seen women try to do it, and some of them are better than others, but generally speaking, it's a dude game. Like, it's something that men do playfully with each other. I haven't seen many women pull it off particularly well. Maybe women do pull it off well, and I just haven't seen it a lot, but it seems to me I've seen a lot of girls who try to pull it off and they just don't do as well as men. Men, they spar. It's really cool. And so a guy who's among his guy friends and really relaxed with his guy friends and just kind of hanging out, having a good time, he's not nervous, he's not on edge, he's not trying to impress anybody necessarily, he's just kind of relaxed. He'll have these little spats with his friends, these little trades of insults. And if a guy is really relaxed with a woman and he gives her one of these little teeny playful insults, it's a great indication. At least this is what I'm thinking. I could be very far off on this. it's a great indication that he's relaxed with that woman, that he feels at ease around her, that he's comfortable around her, that he doesn't feel like he's trying to reach up and impress her. When Mystery says a demonstration of higher value, I think a lot of people think that everybody's on this little ladder and it's like, haha, I'm way up here and you're down there. When really it's just like in a social group, because humans are very social creatures. Am I relaxed around you? Am I trying to reach up to where you're standing and prove that I'm worthy of you? Or am I just kind of mellow and at ease? And every once in a while, if I'm feeling a little bit playful, I'll toss this little insult your way and kind of jab at you, because that's what men do when they're relaxed and they're among their peers. I don't think that looking at it as an insult is really the best way to go about doing it. You have to understand that this is more of a playful thing. And so when I would go out to work and I would meet these guys and they would like start hurling these like just condescending, spiteful little remarks my way, I think they really thought that they were somehow going to convince me to just jump into bed with them. And really it was like, well, give me your money. Like right now, just give me your money or shut up and go away. You have two options here. I will put up with your shit as long as I think I can get money out of you. And if I think that I cannot get money out of you, I will go find someone who is less disgusting. So that's really what I think about negging. I think a lot of people have a very incorrect assumption of how negging actually goes down in real life. A good neg, like good negging, is playful. It will make her laugh. It'll make her giggle. It's fun. And it's done in a spirit of fun. And good negging is attractive to women. Women do not like men who throw insults at them all the time. Women do not like men who are jerks. These are two very different things. They might superficially look similar, but in reality, there's just this huge like layer underneath that of subtlety that ultimately changes how it goes down socially. Group theory. Women of quality tend to be found in groups and rarely, if ever, alone. When girls get together, they engage in a groupthink mentality. The groupthink is due to the same psychological mechanism that causes pre-selection. Girls look to one another to validate their choices and feelings. I do not begin to know about this one. First of all, he starts off with women of quality tend to be found in groups and rarely, if ever, alone. I guess I'm not a woman of quality. I was always alone. I did not like hanging out with other women. There are exceptions to that rule, but generally speaking, if I was out and about, I was alone. Other women back home, a lot of them, I'm not saying all of them, there were a lot of women who were very beautiful and very pretty and very confident, but I had a lot of issues with other women in my hometown looking at me as competition and being very, not very nice to me because I think they saw me as competition. And so I had many situations where women would be quite unfriendly to me, especially before up until like the second strip club that I worked at. The first one I worked at, the women were really, really bitchy, like clearly did not like me. Before that, in a lot of the churches I went to, like single girls in that town, in the churches that I went to, they had this tendency to just treat me like competition. Perhaps it was the fact that there just weren't a lot of really great guys in the churches in my hometown. Like there weren't a lot of great guys around there to begin with. And so you've got a limited selection of men to choose from. And then if you're going into the churches, that limited selection of men just like narrows down to, hardly any men. And so you've got all these girls in the churches who are all competing over the same 5 guys. And when I say 5 guys, I'm really not exaggerating. This is not like hyperbolic 5 guys. I'm talking about 5 men in our age group who were single in our church that we all had to like kind of compete for. And I wasn't competing necessarily. I was just there and trying to hang out with anybody that I found interesting. And unfortunately for me, like the guys that were really interesting were, the most attractive guys there. And so I was I was thinner than a lot of the other girls, and kind of prettier than the other girls. And the other girls really didn't like that. So they tended to be pretty, like, they would actively try to keep me away from attractive men. And I just kind of learned that other women will view me as competition. I'm not saying that I'm much older now than I was back then, so I say this a lot, but I cannot emphasize this enough. The pretty, the bloom has faded from the rose, okay? But when I was younger, that was an issue that I had to deal with, and it was not a fun issue. So for me, eventually, I just learned that I was better off alone. I was better off on my own. I operated better on my own. Even after I got into good clubs and started making friends who were dancers, more often than not, I preferred to work alone. So when it comes to groupthink and women having groupthink, I have no idea. Conversation threads. He talks a little bit about conversation threads, and I like what he has to say. This is good general social advice for when you're meeting new people, and it's something I'm not good at. So I can appreciate this as somebody who's not good at it. I can also appreciate this as somebody who's probably not going to get good at it anytime soon. But like, if you're practicing talking to women, and if you're not good at talking to women, you're reading this book and you're thinking, okay, I want to get good at talking to women, practice. Just practice, practice, practice. So if you're practicing talking to women, starting multiple conversation threads is a really good skill to have. It makes your conversations seem more organic, it makes them seem more natural. And he goes into this, and he actually does a really good job of explaining it and talking about the different ways that you can make those conversation threads seem good, natural, and pleasant. So I really like this. Like, I like this section. This is good generic social skill to have. So if you're really socially well practiced with both women and men, just with people in general, it's probably not going to be as difficult for you. For me, I'm not particularly socially well practiced. I'm not particularly social skilled. So this is something that I personally struggle with in talking to people, even people that I'm friends with. It takes me a while to get to know people. It takes me a while to build up that sense of natural flowing conversation with folks. So I can appreciate this part of the chapter a lot. In the early part of the set, when you haven't yet demonstrated much value, girls won't be eager to contribute much effort to continuing the interaction. You must be able to contribute 90% of the conversation, or it will die. This is very true. It might even be safe to say that this is the first shit test that a girl gives a guy. He walks up, and if he... Well, I mean, yeah, that would make sense that this is the first shit test. This is the official first shit test you encounter. Well, maybe not the first one. You have to break the ice. You have to say hi. You have to start up the conversation. That's probably your first test. But your second huge challenge will be to prove that you are interesting. And so I always think of birds when I think of this. Like, I imagine, like, there are birds that will, like, fly up to a female, and they'll flutter their wings, and they'll do some sort of ornate dance in midair and fan out their feathers. And like, there was this hummingbird I saw one time just recently. I was showing my kids a documentary on hummingbirds because I was trying to teach them about hummingbirds, because we have hummingbirds in the front yard. But there was this one male hummingbird. He flutters up to this female, and it takes a lot of energy to stay in the air, especially with big showy feathers. And he's dancing around in front of her, and he's fanning out his feathers, and he's putting out this massive display of energy, and he's displaying to her. And in the footage that I saw, unfortunately, she wasn't particularly interested, so she just kind of turned around and fluttered away. That's what it's like for people. We're like that. So imagine yourself being this showy bird who walks up to a woman, and you're displaying your ornate and beautiful feathers to her, and you're trying to keep her interest. How would it look like if a human does that? Since we don't have big showy feathers hanging off our butts, we would do it by showing off our mental agility. How interesting are you? How mentally strong are you? What are your skills? How do you display those skills in such a way that it doesn't look like you're just begging her to pay attention to you? Like, please, I'm interesting. You want to have a conversation with her, and you want to display who you are. Like, you literally want to set who you are out and display for her, and try to show her the things about you that are most interesting. I think about, again, birds, bower birds, how they'll like lay out this beautiful, colorful nest in front of a female, and have all sorts of pretty little piles of brightly colored things, and have it all arranged neatly and prettily, and they'll spend hours and hours and hours doing this. You're showing her through a conversation that you're an attractive, interesting, well-rounded, experienced, mature human male that she's going to want to reproduce with. You do that through conversations. So frequently women, like birds, will just kind of sit back, and you'll talk at us, and we'll listen to you talk, and we'll be judging you and weighing you on, is he interesting? Is he what I'm interested in? So initially, when you first meet the woman, she doesn't know who you are. You haven't demonstrated to her whether or not she should be interested in you. She's not going to be particularly interested in putting any energy into getting to know you, unless you're just radically beautiful. And even then, it's kind of like, okay, radically beautiful is nice, but I'm gonna maybe need something more than that. You gotta have, you gotta have some brain cells up there. Just something to prove that you're a little bit more than a pretty face. You have to provide her with the conversation, at least initially. Once she starts becoming interested in you, and that's where those indicators of interest at the beginning of the chapter start becoming really valuable. The more interested she gets in you, the more she's going to talk back to you and provide you with more conversation to work with, because at this point it's like, okay, he's a valuable person. He's somebody that I actually want to get to know. But until that point, you're putting on a display for her. So walking up to a girl and talking to her, it's a display. You're putting on a show for her to a certain extent. So Mystery's idea of showmanship in getting to know women and getting, pickup artistry, he's not entirely wrong. You are putting on a show for a woman when you first meet her. And I'm sure that seems terribly unfair. Like, hey, can't I just talk to a woman and not have to, be all fancy about it? Can't I just talk to a woman and say, hi, I like this place. Do you like this place? Let's just have a conversation. Let me just relax. You can't do that at the beginning, because she's weighing you. She's deciding whether or not you're capable of putting yourself on display. And so, 90% of the conversation, just expect us to be incredibly lazy when we first meet you. And it's not because we're inherently lazy. It's because we're kind of taking a step back and judging you and sizing you up and getting to know whether or not we like you. I still remember my first conversation with my husband. I don't remember much of what we talked about, but what I do remember is that I got stuck alone with him out on a porch. I had followed out this guy that I was kind of seeing in a friends with benefits kind of way, because he was a smoker, so I followed him outside. And my husband was a heavy smoker, and so he went outside. And the guy that I was friends with benefits with decided to just clear the area, just turned around and walked out. I can't remember whether he had forgotten a lighter, or whether he just didn't want to talk to me that day, or what his deal was. There was something he wanted to do, or something he'd remembered that he wanted to talk to our other friend with. Anyway, he just turned around and left. And it would have been distressingly obvious and probably a little needy of me to turn around and follow him. So I was out there on the porch with this complete total stranger that I had, barely spoken any words to other than, hi, by the way, I'm a stripper, so there's no confusion. That was it. I was out there with this guy, and so I'm looking at him, and he's smoking. And so just to be polite, I say 2 or 3 things to him, hi, so, you just moved here. I think that's what it was, something like that. Just something really, okay, I've said my token polite thing, I'm done, And I remember that he picked up the conversation, and he started talking to me, and he was telling me these stories, and it was really interesting. And pretty soon we were having this wonderful conversation just back and forth, and I didn't want it to end. He made the display. He made the initial display, and then as time passed, it was like, okay, you're actually interesting. Now I want to talk to you. Now I'm not just throwing you a few token words. Now you're interesting. Now I'm interested. That's how it works with women. Love it or hate it, that's the way the game is played. When you tell a story, it doesn't have to be overtly impressive. In fact, it's better if it's not some amazing story, because you don't want the target to think you're trying to impress her. As long as the story is fun, interesting, and most important, captures the attention of her group, it will work. Again, with groups, I don't know how to interact with groups. I'm very bad at it. I'm incredibly introverted. I don't understand group interaction at all. This is a horrible weakness of mine, and I am aware of it. But I think what he's saying with storytelling is very interesting, and I think he's right. You don't want to tell some story about how, well, you don't want to start off at least with some story about how this one time you were climbing a mountain and you saved somebody's life, and something super hyper dramatic, unless it just segues into very, very naturally, and it just happens to be right there. It's honestly better to tell kind of average stories in an interesting way. It makes you seem like an interesting person. If you do something that's relatively mundane and ordinary, and you can make it sound exciting and interesting and fun, that means that you're an interesting person. Interesting people are interesting when they go to work and do normal jobs. You want to be able to take something relatively normal, relatively mundane, and make it the most interesting thing in the world. Because you're not necessarily talking about that time that your car broke down in a bad neighborhood. You're not talking about that. You're talking about, I'm an interesting person. That's what you're trying to really convey underneath the story about the time that your car broke down. I'm an interesting person. I have interesting experiences. I have the kind of mindset that life is interesting to me, and so life becomes interesting when I'm around. You want to share that with people. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It helps if it's just a mundane, ordinary, but surprisingly fun and interesting story. And it makes you seem interesting when you do that. So this is good advice. He spends a bit of time now talking about things that you can do to draw interest and attention to yourself. Role playing, a memory gimmick that he has, just a bunch of different things that you can do to try and attract positive attention for yourself from a group of people. He tends to talk about groups. I tend to not think in terms of groups. He's probably right. I just never happened to be a group person. I was an introvert. Still am. Quite an introvert. At the end of the chapter, he has a section called How to Practice Your Game, and I was really happy to see that because that's important. Like, I've said it so many times, I'm sure it gets annoying to hear it, but practice really helps. Definitely practice. Definitely just try things out. See what works for you. Let it become natural. Like, it has to become part of you. Like, if you just act it out, it's not going to work. So he has here like a list, like just a bulleted list of helpful hints and tips for just getting out there and practicing talking to women. If you're a really introverted guy and you have trouble talking to pretty women, and I think I'd say this book is most geared toward introverted men who are not comfortable walking up and saying hello to beautiful women or women that they find attractive. This is the section of the chapter that you want to be reading if you're that kind of guy. Honestly, I think this whole book is a really good book if you're that kind of guy. If you just aren't particularly well practiced at talking to women, or if you're not really good at talking to women, or, if you hit the same stumbling block in talking to women again and again and again, it's like, okay, it was going so well, and then we hit this point, and it always takes a nosedive at that point. This is a good book for all of those kinds of situations, but it's going to be particularly helpful to the guy who is really shy, really introverted. Maybe he's a huge nerd. He's really, really interested in something. Could be really, really smart, but just not particularly socially skilled, especially when talking to pretty women. This is the book for that guy. And I've met that guy before who's, really smart, not good at talking to women, really attractive, not good at talking to women. This is the book where you want to read it, you want to learn from it, you want to take a lot of notes, and you want to go out and practice and try these things. And so the fact that he has an end of the chapter section on practicing and getting out there and trying it, that's what you want to do. Like, wherever you're having difficulty in talking to women, forming relationships, you're going to want to practice that part and see if you can't figure out a way to make it right. If you're having difficulty with all of it, you really want to practice. And that's very hard because the rejection is not fun. But the more you practice, the less rejection you'll get over a period of time. And also, the less the rejection is going to bother you, because after a while, okay, this one doesn't like me, but I can go talk to that one or that other one. You have options, and you become less, it becomes less painful because you realize you have options. You have, how did Tomasi put it? You come in with an attitude of abundance, and everything hurts less. So practice, practice, practice. And so really that's the end of the chapter. That's it. I don't think I've read past this chapter. Let's see. Male to female interest. I have not read past this chapter. Sweet. So I'm gonna actually start reading the next chapter this week. It's been crazy. Quarantine has definitely altered my schedule. But yeah, I'm excited about the next chapter. Things are getting really good. He's got a lot of information, like more than I never want to read a chapter and feel like I've just covered the entire meaty parts of the chapter in just one video. So this is good. I'm excited. Things are going well. I can't wait to see what he has to say next. I'll talk to you guys later.